Hey everybody, thanks for coming today. We're going to get started here in just a minute. I see a few more people have popped in, so welcome. And take a minute and go down to the polls and quizzes section at the bottom of the Zoom, and you'll see I've got some questions in there. They're just sort of a few little icebreaker questions to get you thinking about the subject that we're going to be talking about today, and I'll be referring to them and letting you know how your other attendees are answering those questions as we go along. And, it's completely anonymous. Nobody's going to see your answers. Nobody even knows that you're here. That's the really cool thing about having this online seminar versus having our seminars in person, is that it can be completely anonymous. So you can feel comfortable to answer these questions that are in the poll and quizzes section without anybody else seeing what you're saying. You can feel comfortable sending me questions throughout our conversation today down in the questions section. And then from there, feel free to do that as we're going along, and I will answer those questions if I can as we're going. But anything that I don't answer as we're going, I'll save some time at the end so that I can look over all those questions and spend a couple of minutes talking about the things that you guys have brought to my attention that you want further clarification about. Maybe it's a pressing question that you came in today that you already know that you wanted to get some answers. You can feel free to put that question down there. Please know that if you've got questions that are case specific, I'm not going to talk about anything that's going to be identifying or that anybody would be able to know that it's you. And so some of those questions, if they're really specific, I might hold off on those and encourage you to come in to have a one-on-one consultation. But anything that is a broad use that I can bring to the group and answer in a way that that can enrich you and not give away any details about your case, I'll definitely try to do those as we go along. And then, like I said, at the end. So it looks like we have a really good crowd here already. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started with some introductions. Like I said, for the new people that have come in as I've been talking, it's completely anonymous. Nobody is seeing your name, that you're here. You can answer these poll questions that are down in the polls and quizzes, just to give me a little bit more of an idea of where you are on this journey, so that I can talk about that as we go along and let you know about your fellow attendees, what they're feeling, and then also make sure that I'm addressing this in a way that's sensitive to where you are on this journey right now. So a little bit more about me. My name is Shaunis Mercer. If you haven't already met me, if you're not following me on social media, feel free to do that. I try to give lots of really good, tangible, useful tips on socials as I can. I don't look to provide you with all of the answers. I don't have a crystal ball, but certainly I've got almost 20 years of family law experience at this point. And so I try to use what I've learned through the years to be able to help not just my clients, but just anybody who's going through divorce issues or any family law issues, really, to have some of that knowledge that I've gained over the years on what's worked for families and what hasn't. So I'm really glad to see you guys spending a little bit of time with the poll. That again will help as we go along. So the name of our firm is Peaceful Law. It's located here in Holly Springs, North Carolina, but we serve clients all across the state. Our firm was started really with the goal of providing peace to families. So we handle family law issues and estate planning issues because really we believe that that's where we can make a huge impact on families being able to have peace through really hard transitions in their lives and really difficult situations. Our goal is to settle all of our cases outside of court. What that means is that we can help keep the control of what's happening within your family when you're separating. And again, this is from doing this for almost 20 years now. The best outcomes that I've seen have been in cases where we've been able to keep things away from a courtroom and give that power back to the families to be able to make those decisions. So let's go ahead and get started. like I said, today we're going to spend some time talking about how we can empower you as you're going through these transitions in your life, to navigate the emotions that come along, to have better clarity about the financial picture for your family, to learn some helpful tips about what co-parenting looks like, and to explain some of those legal terms that you've heard, I'm sure, floated around the internet. If you're in any of the Facebook groups for parents, people frequently like to talk about all of the legal stuff. So I'll give you some basics there so that you can have some good legal foundation for legal information that can help you to understand some of those words that you might have heard. And then my favorite and most exciting part is we're going to talk about your post-divorce glow up, and what that looks like coming out on the other side, because that's really the goal, is to navigate through this sort of tough new world that you're going to go into and come out the other side through a transformation. And so we'll talk about that some later today. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is really the emotions of the divorce and what you're going through. So I'm going to pull up the polls, and the first question that I asked is, how are you feeling about 2025? And most of you have answered, oh, okay, so 50% of you have answered that you're cautiously optimistic about this new year. So another 25% of you are saying, bring it on, I'm ready for the change, you're geared up, ready to go into this. And then, another quarter of you are just wanting to survive one day at a time. And that is just fine. I like knowing where you guys are in this process, how you're feeling, just because I think that that's a really important temperature check that I always want to take when I'm meeting with a client, so that I can know how to approach this in a way that that makes sense for you. And those emotions are going to change day to day. So every time that we hop onto a call, I'm going to take a quick temperature check and find out how you're feeling that day, and make sure that we're addressing the needs that you have based on your emotions that day. And so I think that for a lot of people, when you first start considering separating, you go through sort of the stages of grief. And when you realize that it's time for a relationship to be over, you have to navigate through all of those stages. And sometimes you revert back, back to denial. Maybe you are bargaining, like, I can just, if we just go to marriage counseling one more time, it's going to be different this time. I'm going to be able to help my spouse to see the light, and things are going to get better. If I could just be different, things would be better. And then you start to be really angry about the fact that this relationship has to end, and that it can't be fixed. And so as I watch my clients go through these different emotions, one thing that I encourage them to do is to meet each of those emotions that they're feeling with curiosity. Why am I feeling this way? What is it that I'm feeling? And don't try to push it down. Don't try to suppress what you're feeling, but really feel the feeling, and then feel through the feeling, right? Go through, okay, I know that this is the way that I'm feeling today. What does this mean? What actionable steps do I need to take to move forward through this? Some of the hardest times emotionally that my clients have had is when they don't see the separation coming. So when I have folks that come in and they know that it's time, they've gotten to that point emotionally where they know that it's time to separate, we can work to create a really good plan about what that looks like. And we can adjust the plan, right? As the emotions change, that's just fine for us to do that. It gets a little bit harder when you're surprised by what the other person has decided in your marriage, and then you have to respond. You maybe haven't gone through those stages of grief, right? Like, maybe you thought that you had a happy marriage, and you're finding out that your spouse had moved on with somebody else. And so now what you're dealing with is not only a betrayal, but the realization that your life is about to change. And so in those cases, what I really try to do for the clients when we have our peaceful blueprint session is to, again, let them feel their feelings, let them go through those waves that are going to come, but really try to provide concrete information and concrete next steps so that we can just keep putting one foot in front of the other and we can keep moving through this process, even though it's a surprise, even though it's not something that we want. It's going to happen, and you have a choice at that point about how it's going to happen, right? And so when people are coming to see me, what they're choosing is peace, and they're choosing to move forward in a way that we're able to prioritize their children, if there are children involved, and the peace for their children and their own personal peace, so that they don't have to fight if it's not necessary. They don't have to give in to sort of those worst emotions that we feel. It's okay to have the feelings, but when the emotions take over, and the emotions are what's guiding the process that you're engaging in for divorce, you're doing yourself a major disservice. So I want for you to feel those feelings. You're allowed to grieve the end of your marriage. You're allowed to feel relief that you're finally taking that next step. But we're going to check in as we're going along, and we're going to find out sort of where you are on that roller coaster, and we're going to work with it. And I'll tell you, like, the best thing is when we can get to the other side and you can look back and you can look at that whole journey that you've gone through, and you can feel that relief of having gone through that. You can feel that growth of having gone through that. I do encourage my clients from the first meeting. The one thing that you'll hear me say is that one of the first questions I ask is, are you working with a mental health professional? Do you have a therapist? And even people who maybe have never seen a therapist in their entire life, it's my recommendation that you consider just a session or two with a mental health professional, because divorce is going to be one of the hardest, most emotionally challenging times of your life, and making sure that you're taking care of your own mental health. Make sure that you're not letting the emotions rule the process that we're going to be going through. And so while I am empathetic, while I am very aware of the emotions that my clients are experiencing, I still understand the limitations of my profession as your attorney. And I will encourage you to take a holistic approach to your divorce and work with other professionals that can help you through those other places where you need support. And so I'm always encouraging clients to reach out to mental health professionals. I have a list of referrals that I can help you to maybe navigate to find a couple of options that suit your own goals and your own personality. I mean, just like every attorney isn't for every client, every therapist isn't for every client either. And we can work together to find out who that right person is to help you to be on your team in that mental health professional role. One of the other things that I provide for my clients when we start working together is a planner, so that you can start keeping some notes. And I do recommend journaling as a way to take the temperature of where you are, what you're feeling, for your own, just processing those emotions. But it's also really useful as we're trying to keep up with the details of what's happening, because things happen so quickly sometimes at the beginning of a separation, that I do like it if you're able to write those things down, because it's going to be really helpful for us to know exactly what's happened along the way. And that way you're not having to call your therapist every 5 minutes. So you're not having to call us every 5 minutes. You're able to take control of that yourself, and to journal those things that are important to you. I do also recommend, finding some mindfulness exercises that work for you. Other stress management techniques. Exercise is really awesome. It's like a joke that people who go through divorce are getting healthier because they're exercising more than they ever had. They're starting to practice self-care. And especially for us parents, a lot of times we neglect ourselves because we're so busy taking care of our kids, especially if you're that default parent. How many times have you given up, your exercise time or, a walk with a neighbor that's really relaxing for you in exchange for taking care of your kids? So as we start working through separation, as we start having those responsibilities that shift between the parties and both parents are stepping up to parent, that changes and you're able to carve out that time for self-care. And I just can't encourage you enough to keep that up as you're going through this process. So the next question that I asked in the survey was, when it comes to divorce, what's your biggest worry? And it looks like the finances win by a landslide for you guys. So what happens with the money? How am I going to survive financially? That is the biggest concern that you guys are expressing. Farther behind, a little bit farther behind, is the kids. And what that tells me is that hopefully that means that you and your partner, you believe that you guys are going to be able to work out what's best and keep your kids' best interest at heart when it comes to the kids. But the finances are a little bit shakier for lots of different reasons. But one of those things that I think everybody's concern is in divorce is that money doesn't go as far in two households as it goes in one. It doesn't matter if you make, $50,000 a year in your household or $5 million a year in your household. The money doesn't go as far when we divide it in half and put it into two separate pots. You can't run your households the exact same way when we're splitting up for divorce. But the good news is that we can figure this out. We can make a plan to figure out what's going to happen with the money. And usually at that first meeting, our peaceful blueprint session, we're able to talk over your financial specifics, not to give you a final answer, not to tell you what the final outcome is going to be, but to talk about likely outcomes, to talk about what the law says as it relates specifically to your case. So I do think that this provides a really good opportunity for you guys to think through your own finances. And I like to sort of go over just an overall understanding of what the law says in North Carolina as it relates to money. And it's a broad concept when we're talking about dividing up all of the stuff that we've accumulated during the marriage. We call that equitable distribution. So that's what the law calls it, is equitable distribution of the marital assets. So what does that mean? Well, the first thing it means is that there's a difference between marital assets and separate assets. What is separate is treated differently than what is marital. So what are separate assets? So separate assets are things that we had prior to the date of marriage, assets that we owned completely on our own prior to when we got married, and that we've continued to hold those assets separately during the marriage. So if we had a bank account with $5,000 in it that we had saved every birthday check that our grandmas gave us growing up, every birthday party, that money we put into that separate checking account, and we kept that as our little nest egg over here, that's your separate money. It gets trickier if we've taken that separate money, that $5,000, and we've put it into a marital account. So then we've given that to the marriage. So that's a really simple, basic example of the difference between separate property that's remained separate versus money that has been pulled into the marriage, right? So that is something that is a good tip that I talk to people about before they get married. If we're talking about prenuptial agreements, is what is our separate property before we're getting married? And do we intend to keep that money separate? Because if so, the law will respect that that is your separate money and that that's not subject to that equitable distribution of the marital assets. So there are a couple of other things that can be considered separate property. So if you inherit property, or you're given a gift that's just to you, then that is your separate property. And so that money is also not subject to division of equitable distribution. The problem is that for a lot of us, it's just not that simple. When you're in a marriage, you're operating on same team rules a lot of times, right? And so when you're on the same team, anything that comes in goes right into that marital pot. And we're just taking things and we're just dumping them right into our joint assets. And when we do that, it makes things a lot trickier when it comes time to separate, if we end up having to separate, to try to pull back that money that was separate. So if you're in a place where you're unsure if you're going to move forward with divorce, but things are a little rocky in your marriage, you may want to consider that if separate money is coming in, or you have separate money, that you might want to keep that money separate in order to protect it at some point in the future. So what is marital? So marital is anything that is accumulated during the marriage besides those exceptions that we just talked about. So that means your retirement account, even though it's in your separate name, even though it's based on your work that you're doing at your job, that is still marital property. And the reason why that is again, it's that same team concept. It's the idea that anything that we do during the marriage is work that we're putting in for the same team. So it doesn't matter if we're, the running back and every day we're going into the office and we're just hustling every day to earn income and bring money in. That all belongs to the team. The team is benefiting from that work because we're on the team. It doesn't matter if we're the quarterback and we're running the household every day and we're calling the shots with the investments, where the money's going, how it's being directed, how it's being spent, how much money we're spending at the grocery store, whether we're shopping the sales or whether we're going, to Fresh Market and buying whatever we want. All of those decisions are for the same team. And so it all belongs to the team. It is marital assets and marital debt that we're accumulating when we're working for the team. So when it comes time to divide it all, we take it all and we put it in a pile in the middle, and then we divide it up equitably. And what does that mean? Well, most of the time what that means is 50-50. Equal amount to husband, equal amount to wife, 50-50. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes equitable isn't equal, but a lot of times it is. So a good way of thinking about this, if you're thinking about how am I going to, I haven't worked during the marriage. I've been taking care of these kids. I've been taking care of the house. What do I do? What you can know is that those contributions that you've been making to the team mean that you're entitled to an equal share, an equitable share of everything that your spouse has been earning at their job, everything that your spouse has been getting in terms of like stock options, in terms of retirement dollars, savings, property, houses, stuff. He has a guitar, guess what? It's your guitar too. 50% of that guitar is yours. If you have like an amazing person shoe collection, guess what? Your husband has half of an amazing person shoe collection. Now, does this mean that we're dividing the purses and the shoes? Does this mean that we're splitting up the really cool guitar collection? Usually it doesn't, but it means that we're balancing those things. So we put everything in a pile in the middle, and then I want to keep my purses. So my purses go in this pile. My spouse wants to keep their guitars, so their guitars go in that pile. And we're weighing those things, and we want for what ends up on one side to be about the same as what ends up on the other side for our equitable distribution. And we treat retirement dollars differently than we treat things that we could sell more easily, that are more liquid. And we can get into all of those specific details when you come in and we're talking about the specifics of your case. But that's a big thing that you need to understand. It's also important to understand, like, great, Shauna, so we've divided up the property, but I haven't worked in 15 years. Like, how am I going to pay my bills? That's my savings. That's how I'm going to afford to have a house. But how am I going to pay my bills? Well, that's what alimony is for. So alimony is designed for a dependent spouse to be able to maintain the lifestyle that they've enjoyed during the marriage. So if your spouse is a supporting spouse, then we try to figure out what's fair in terms of like, what is a fair amount of money for that person to keep and what's a fair amount of money for you to get in order for both of you to be able to run your households. And that depends on a whole lot of stuff, right? It depends on how much they make, what their reasonable expenses are each month, and what they have left over, if they have anything left over. And then how much do you make? Like, do you have a small part-time job? Do you like work as an assistant for a few hours a week at your kid's school or at the gym or something? If so, like what's your income? Then what are your reasonable needs? Like, what does it take to run your household? Is there other money that you have access to help run that household? Is there child support coming in? We can think about all of these things and we see like, what's your need after we deduct all of your expenses from what you make? What's that deficiency each month? And then we look at either his or her surplus or deficiency, and we compare that to your deficiency each month. We try to balance that out. And it doesn't mean 50-50. So it's about figuring out what's fair in terms of making sure that you can continue to survive financially. So spousal support, alimony, I use those words interchangeably as we're talking. But that is something that is available to many of my clients who have been stay-at-home parents or have been underemployed parents. And the logic behind or underemployed spouses, you don't have to be a parent, right? But the logic behind that is that you've made sacrifices in your career. You haven't pursued the career that you would have had you stayed single. And you've done that for the team, right? For the marriage. And so the sacrifices that you've made for the marriage have allowed the success of your partner, your spouse, so that they could go out and they could have that awesome career. They could travel for work because you were staying at home. You took the lower paying job so that you had flexibility for the family. Or you have to prepare all of these dinner parties for your spouse's work partners to be able to come. You keep the home fires burning so that they can go out and do what they need to do to earn the money to bring back. And because of that, you're entitled to spousal support. And spousal support generally lasts half the duration of the marriage. That's not a hard and fast rule in North Carolina. There's no guarantees of length of time. There's no guarantees in amounts. So if we don't figure this out outside of court, then a judge is making those decisions for us in court. And from what I found, families are way better at figuring this stuff out on their own, what's fair, what's reasonable outside of court than to have somebody to dictate that to them when they go into court. So a lot of times my clients have no understanding of their finances because one person takes that responsibility during the marriage and the other spouse just doesn't have the experience with the finances. It's not that they're not capable of it. It's just not what their job was during the marriage. And so we might have to get a financial person involved to help the client to understand that. Again, that goes back to that holistic representation that we provide. It's about having those partners in our community, our professional community, that can jump in when we need to have somebody to jump in and help the client to understand what their budget's going to look like, what their need is, and what these assets really mean so that you can be educated to make good decisions about how we should move forward. It's really hard to do that if you don't understand what your assets even are. And I do recommend that if you haven't ever kept a budget before and you're still in your marriage, it would be a good idea when you're making that decision of whether you want to stay or you want to go, to take this opportunity to get more informed about the finances, about what that money looks like coming in. We can get all of that information, attorney to attorney, or when I let the other person know that we're representing you and that we're going to work on a separation agreement, I can ask for that stuff. But you're going to feel a lot better and you're going to have a lot more peace if you already start to gather that information, so that when we have that beginning conversation about the money, you've got more data so that we can understand what likely outcomes are going to be like with actual numbers versus just guessing. Fine either way. We meet you where you are in terms of what your knowledge is, and what your need is in terms of assistance during this process. And the next thing that we're going to talk about is parenting through the separation. I think for any of my parent clients, this is one of the first things that they ask me about. While finances might be the heaviest weighing concern, it might be the part that makes them the most scared. I would say that the parenting, understanding what parenting looks like in a co-parenting relationship is the first thing that we talk about. So I'm sorry I made you wait, but I do want to talk to you about that. And it looks like that all of you guys, like 100% of you today, have said that you want all the help, all the advice that you can get. From a mindset perspective, you are open, ready, willing, and able to learn today. And so I'm so excited about that. And we will talk through what co-parenting looks like through separation. So, again, like the first thing that people ask me is, are my kids going to be okay? Because it's a really scary thing. It's a really brave thing for you to do, to be willing to consider separation when you have kids at home. And even adult kids, right? Like, how is it going to impact them? That comes up all the time. And I can tell you that some of the most recent research that I've been looking at says that what's hard for kids is conflict. So we've been worried for all of these years that divorce is bad for kids, right? Like, we've all heard it. We've seen, oh, like, I'm going to mess my kids up by getting a divorce. But what the newest research is actually showing is that it's not the divorce that's the problem. It's the conflict that is the problem. So sorry, I need you to readjust. I need to sit back a little bit. But it's the conflict that's the problem. So whether you stay together and you're fighting all the time in front of the kids, whether you're going through a highly contentious divorce and you're mouthing your ex-spouse to your kids all the time, the kids are watching you guys be just like toxic and vicious with each other. That's what's bad for kids. That's what harms kids, and that's what leads to bad outcomes. The divorce itself, you've got the control of how you handle that in terms of how that's going to impact your kids. Is it going to suck for you to not be able to see your kid every night? Absolutely. It's hard. I don't, pull any punches when it comes to that. I think that we have to acknowledge and admit that divorce is really difficult for parents to go through, but it's harder on the parents than the kids. Like, most of the kids that my clients have had as I've been going through this, like, the kids adjust. It can be hard, but children are resilient. We can encourage them with good parenting, how to get through hard things, and they adjust to the schedule. And I think one of the most surprising things to my parents who have been primary parents, so stay at home, you're the one who kisses all the boo-boos, who goes to all the school conferences, who's, classroom parent, soccer snack bringer, all of that stuff. Like, you're going to find that you're going to realize how much you might have neglected your own needs because you've been giving so much to the kids, that when we move to this co-parenting relationship where each party is taking some responsibility for the kiddos, that you're able to be actually a better parent with having less time with your kids, because you're able to get done all of those things that you need to get done. You're less stressed out because of work. You're less stressed out because of being touched out all the time, every day, 24 hours a day. So you're able to recharge your own batteries. You're able to get done what you need to get done. You're able to connect with other grown-ups when your child isn't with you, so that when your child is there, you can be 100% present for your child, and really have those meaningful connections that sometimes are really hard to do when you're living in a household full of conflict, where you don't want to be in your spouse with your spouse, and so you go to your room as soon as you get home from your stressful day at work. I think that there's a lot of good that can come from the parent-child relationship when you separate. That is what my clients have told me throughout the years. It's what I've personally observed from friends of mine that have gone through divorce. It's really up to your own mindset when you're going through this, whether you're seeing this as an opportunity or you're seeing this as the end of everything. And so you might as well give up and things are never going to be the same again. So I think if you can go into this with a good mindset and you can approach this with positivity and give that to your kids, that there's a lot of opportunity for building really meaningful connections that you might not have been able to build quite so well during the marriage. So what do I mean for that? Like that? You're like, Shauna, this is great, but what does the schedule look like? Where are my kids going to go? How much time am I going to get to have them? I want every single minute that I can have with my kids. And I can tell you that like most of the time, if both parents are competent, fit, caring parents, doesn't matter if one person has been the default parent, one person has been at home, like still 50-50 is a really common schedule for how we land in the child custody portion of our separation agreements. So equal time with each parent is not as scary as it seems. I think that for a lot of people, there's a lot of myths about what that looks like. One of the fears is that means week on, week off, or every other day switching. And there's a lot of different schedule options that we use. One of my favorites is what's called a 2-2-5-5 schedule. And what that is that one parent has Monday and Tuesday each week. One parent has Wednesday and Thursday each week. And then we're alternating these blocks of long weekends. So what that results in is 2 days with one parent, 2 days with the other, then 5 days with one parent, and then 5 days with the other. And so one of the things that we're going to do for everybody who's attended today is I'm going to send out some of my common custody options, which can get you thinking about what options you think would work well for your kids. And so I can tell you that when kids are in school, this is a really awesome plan for the custody schedule. And the reason why is because you're able to start developing these rituals and routines in your own family now that your family is in two separate households. So what that looks like is if you've got the kids on Monday night, you know that spelling words come home on Monday. So every Monday night, you're sitting down at the kitchen table and you guys are going through the spelling words, the new spelling words that have come home. On Tuesday, you know that there's guitar lessons. And so you're taking the kiddo to guitar lessons on Tuesday and you're picking up pizza on the way home. So then your kid knows every Tuesday night is pizza night. At mom's house, we have pizza every Tuesday night. Then your kid's with dad on Wednesday and Thursday night. So what does that mean? It means that you can work late on Wednesday night. You know that you can tell your boss that every Wednesday night you can count on me to get in those extra hours on Wednesday night. So you don't have to work late on Monday and Tuesday when you've got your kiddo. Working parents love this because it really allows them each week to have some time to get caught up on their work so that they don't have to be as divided in their attention when the kids are with them. The other thing that it allows for is that if book club is on Thursday, guess what? The kids are at dad's on Thursday. You don't have to arrange childcare. You can make your plans to go to your book club, you make your plans to go to yoga, do what you need to do to be a real, actual grown-up and have connections with other grown-ups. And that is a healthy thing for parents to be able to do. And it's something that I think is so hard for both working outside of the home parents and stay-at-home parents to do, because we always feel like we have to be on 24 hours a day for our kids. So if we work all day and we're not able to see our kids during the day, then we feel guilty if we leave the house even for 5 minutes when we come home in the afternoons. And if we're stay-at-home parents, we feel like it's our job. Like we have to be on 24 hours a day for these kids. And that's not really good for anybody. So in divorce, it's really that time, right? Like I talked about the glow up earlier. That's really the opportunity for you to examine and evaluate how you parent and how you divide your time to take care of your own self and to put yourself back into that puzzle of take things that need to be taken care of in any given week. And you can really make time for that if you approach your divorce intentionally, as we're going through all of this. All right, so I've been Gabby, and so we've still got some things to get to. So I'm going to go through these next parts a little bit more quickly. Again, don't forget that you can give me questions throughout the presentation, and I can answer them. So we're going to get to this next person's question that they've brought up. So I'm going to incorporate it into this next section. They've asked, are most things related to the actual date of the marriage, or can it go on the time that's based, the time of the whole relationship? So you were together for a whole bunch of years prior to being married, but the marriage itself is actually short. And what I'll tell you is that in North Carolina, the law says date of marriage, like date of marriage, date of separation, date of divorce. Those are our three benchmarks in North Carolina law that matter when it comes to dividing stuff, when it comes to figuring out duration of alimony. All of those things are based on date of marriage, date of separation, and date of divorce. What I can tell you, though, is when we're working outside of court and we're trying to come to an amicable resolution, there are a whole lot of things that people think are fair and the right thing to do that isn't exactly what the law says, because your circumstances are different. And I've had many cases where folks have agreed to look at the entire length of the relationship when it comes to coming up with what some of these numbers and what some of these durations of time look like. So in North Carolina, we don't have committed intimate relationship like consideration that we give for folks who have lived together. It's why if you are living together and you're not married, it's really important to get a cohabitation agreement in place. These relationship agreements really provide you with the only protection in North Carolina that the law allows. So there's some things that you can do on a contract basis about what's fair and what isn't for those things prior to date of marriage. But for the most part, family law only addresses date of marriage, date of separation, and date of divorce. So you've heard all these words like date of marriage, date of separation, date of divorce, floated around on these parenting boards where people are giving you legal advice, and they definitely aren't attorneys. But they know what they know based on their life experience, but your circumstances might be different. So I just want to provide you with a really basic vocabulary. And like everything else today, I'm not giving you specific legal advice. I'm giving you legal information so that you can have that foundational framework to then move forward with your own attorney, which I hope is me. I hope you reach out to schedule a consult with me if you're thinking about divorce, but whoever it is that you're working with, I think that it's still really helpful if you've got some understanding of what these words mean. So when we say child custody, and I probably should have said this when we were talking about child custody, what I mean by that is in North Carolina, there's physical custody and there's legal custody of the kids. So physical custody is where the child is living, and generally that's with both parents. There's no difference between if your kiddo is with you 3 nights a week and the other parent 4 nights a week, or if we've got 50-50. Like we don't have different like ranks of custody in North Carolina with physical custody. So it's that you have joint physical custody of the kids, and then we set out what the schedule is for that physical custody of the kids. With legal custody, this is when we're talking about who gets to decide stuff for the kids. So who's deciding if they're having a medical procedure, who's deciding if they're going to go to the magnet school or whether they're going to go to their neighborhood school. Those decisions are decided by the legal custody. And most of the time what the court does is joint legal custody. So if we are going to court, both parents are fit and proper, then we're going to be doing joint legal custody. And that means equal decision making. It means y'all have to come to an agreement about what those decisions will be. If we're working outside of court, still joint legal custody is the most common outcome for what legal custody looks like for kids. Every once in a while, there's a reason why we would deviate from that and give sole legal decision making for either all the issues or specific issues in a case. So if one parent has like a very extreme position on like medical decisions that the court believes is not in the best interest of the kids, or both people can agree that like, look, I made some bad choices. I get it. I understand why you're not comfortable with me making medical choices for the kids. Then one person could end up with sole legal custody as it relates to decision making for medical decisions, but joint custody as it relates to all the other joint legal custody as it relates to all of the other decisions that you can make for the kids. But that's the rare exception. Sole custody, sole legal custody to make all of the decisions for the kids, that's usually reserved for somebody who is not a fit and proper parent, somebody who does not act in a way that the decisions that they make could be considered to be in the best interest of the kids. So again, that rarely comes up that we're doing that, but it does come up occasionally. I talked about alimony earlier, and we gave the definition for that. Spousal support, post-separation support, that's a term that we use for the amount of money to maintain your household prior to the date of divorce. Alimony is after the date of divorce. In the separation agreement, we can call it whatever we want to call it. We can have family support. We can have money for rehabilitative alimony for the person to be able to go back to college and get a degree and then start supporting themselves. We can figure anything out that we want to, but in court, that's what alimony means. So after date of divorce money versus prior to date of divorce money. Child support. Child support is done by guidelines in North Carolina. Most of the time, that's what we do outside of court as well. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes parties agree to just split the expenses equally if their incomes are close to the same and they're doing equal time with the kids. And that's just fine. We can do whatever the parties agree is in the best interest of the kids if we need to. And we've talked about property distribution already. So I do think that one of the important things I want for you to take from the sort of legal lingo portion that we're talking about is I would want you, if you're working with me, to ask me all of the questions. If you don't understand a word that I've said, like ask me what something means and we'll talk about it and make sure that you understand it. You should always feel comfortable talking to your attorney and asking them questions so that so that you can understand what it is that they're saying. Sometimes lawyers accidentally slip into legal lingo because we deal with it every day and we forget that we're not speaking human words, that we're not talking like regular people. So if you need to nudge your attorney and remind them, then you can do that. I mean, I think that you'll find that I talk like a real person because I am a real person, and my friends are real people, my clients are real people, and so I just find it easier to try to talk in regular language that we use every day instead of just using legal words that I'm just spurting out and I have no idea what I'm talking about. And so it's okay to ask your attorney if that's not the way that they communicate. It's okay for you to ask them to break it down. It's okay for you to ask them if you're preparing for a negotiation, like what are likely outcomes? So I will always tell you about what I think is going to happen at a negotiation. I will always tell you what I think is sort of like best. Okay, we shouldn't settle for that when we're talking. And so it's okay to ask your attorney to give you that sort of information if you need to. So I see that I've got some questions and I want to make sure that I answer those. So one of the next questions that I got is like a really good question, which is how do you even ask your spouse to separate? And then what do you do if they don't want to leave? And that is 100% case specific. So I would want to talk to you a little bit more and find out specifically what are the circumstances that are leading up to the separation. And what we do if they don't want to leave depends on sort of the financial situation between the parties and also your own comfort level with uncertainty as we move forward. I will say that no matter what, my advice is if that you are unsafe, if you feel like that you are in danger, that you need to leave immediately. If you feel like that you are physically unsafe in your own home, you can file a domestic violence protective order. You can reach out to me and I'm glad to help guide you to where you need to go to do that. There are domestic violence agencies in every county that you could reach out to. In Wake County, if you reach out to Interact, they are very helpful in assisting you with filing that domestic violence protective order if that's what you need to do for your own safety. So never risk your safety for strategy. That's something that my clients have heard me say over and over again. We can figure out the strategy and we can work around whatever we need to. But if you're not here for me to work with, then I can't fix that. You can't undo something like that. So always make sure that you're safe. But beyond that, when it comes time to separate, like the way that conversation goes depends on the individual family. And I would say my recommendation is best practice is always to consult with the attorney about your specific situation prior to asking your spouse for separation. Get your facts, find out what the finances are going to look like, find out those specifics so that you've got that knowledge so that when you tell the person that you want to separate, you're prepared for the scenarios of what can happen. What happens if he says, fine, get out of the house? You don't have to go, right? What happens if he says, I'm leaving the house, I'm draining the bank accounts? We should have planned ahead so that we've got a plan in place to protect you if something like that happens. If he won't leave, like what do you do then? How do we get him out? If we need to do that. So we can talk about that. I will say that one thing that I find is that once we have asked, when we've let the other person know that you've got representation and that you want to work towards a peaceful settlement, you want to work this out in an amicable way if you can. If they go to an attorney on their own and they say that to them, that other attorney is going to let them know that like they can't make you stay in a marriage that you don't want to be in. And so really they've got two choices, right? It goes back to those emotions in the beginning. Do they want to be led by sort of those worst instincts that we have because of emotions? Or are they willing to like follow a logical path, follow the thing that is going to be best for the whole family in spite of the way that they're feeling and move forward? And so what that usually looks like is that their attorney is going to say to them, like, look, if you don't want to leave the house, we can make them have to file a divorce from bed and board if that's what's necessary. That's another term that you'll see tossed around on all of the mom boards, but a divorce from bed and board in North Carolina says, I don't want to take care of you anymore. I don't want you in my house. I don't want to be responsible for you financially. I want for this marriage to end and you won't get out. So I'm going to tell the court all the reasons why you're a bad person and why you should have to get out of my house. And when you do that, when you file for a divorce from bed and board, and that's a really, again, like oversimplified explanation of it. But when you do that, the court has a hearing to determine what happens next. So that's sort of the worst case scenario of what happens to get somebody out of a house. I'll say that I have had in my 20 years of practice, I've filed for divorce from bed and board handful of times, maybe like 5 times total. Again, that's just a guess. And I've had one hearing on divorce from bed and board. So only once in 20 years have we actually had to go to court and had a hearing about that issue. Most people are going to choose the other option, which is to figure it out. And so figuring it out sometimes means negotiating between the attorneys what we're going to do with the house, like big picture stuff, or it could be like really micro decisions of, okay, she's going to go stay at her mom's this week, but she's going to come back to the house next week. Then he should go stay, with his brother the next week while she's back in the house as the attorneys are negotiating and figuring out the big picture stuff. So we can always find a way. It's just strategizing to figure out what that best plan is for you. So I've got the question about what happens if the kid doesn't want to go to the other parent's house. And there's like real reasons why. So it could be that they have sensory differences, that that there are other reasons why the child doesn't want to go. What does that look like? But the other kids do want to go to the other parent's house. We can figure that out. There's split custody arrangements too. I don't prefer that for most families. I think that when your kids have different needs, though, we need to look at the specific needs of your kids, and it's not one size fits all. And so it might be finding a plan where one kid primarily stays with one parent, the other kids go back and forth 50-50, but we make sure that on the weekends that the kids are with you, that the child is that child that's primarily with the other parent is with you during those weekends. And then on the weekends that the 50-50 kids are with the primary parent, that child is also with the primary parent, so that the sibling bond isn't broken. Because that is really important. The relationship with the other kids is a very important consideration with child custody. So then I've got a question about court and about whether or not I advise people to go to court. And I will tell you that there are absolutely times that somebody comes to see me and the case is not the right fit for our firm. And I don't take cases that aren't the right fit for our firm. So if people are know from the beginning that they don't want to settle the case, that they want to drag it out for as long as possible, that they're unwilling to come to a settlement, then I've got other attorneys that I would recommend that person to so that they can have their goals met. I would spend my time in my consultation with them still explaining to them likely outcomes and still explaining to them what would happen in those situations. And then the other part of that question is, do I represent people so I'm rephrasing this question, but do I represent clients when the case transfers to litigation? So all cases that I take in my office, again, the understanding for my clients is that those cases are non-litigation cases. And so that means no litigation. We're not going to fight. We're going to attempt other ways to get to a settlement. It might be through a collaborative law settlement. It might be through just negotiating back and forth. It could be that we've had a kitchen table conversation and you know what you guys want before you even come in to see me, and you're just hiring me to draft everything up. So those are the types of cases that I handle. I go to mediation with clients. I do everything like that I can to help settle a case outside of court. For cases that need to go to court, so somebody comes in, we attempt to settle, the other side refuses to settle, or something changes where there's a reason why we have to go to court. So there's a child abuse issue. There's a financial like risk where the other person is starting to drain money. They're refusing to be amicable in the way that we're approaching the case. And sometimes emergency things come up like that, and you have to file something in court. Again, I partner with many other law firms. So there are lots of other firms in the area that I refer clients to. If that happens, there have been cases where I stay on in an advisory role in those cases so that we continue strategizing together with the other attorney, and we have co-representation in litigation cases. But philosophically, I don't go to court. That is something that I went to court for many, many years. I've litigated lots of cases, and I have decided that the way that I can best serve clients is if I don't just say that I'm committed to amicable settlements, but if I have built my firm in a way that my commitment to amicable settlements means that you can trust that I'm not going to go to court. So let's just hurry up and talk a little bit more about what happens next. So we talked through this whole process about the way your mindset and the way that you can see this divorce as an opportunity for your own growth and independence coming through this. So you're working with a therapist to find, your own areas for growth, the ways that you can move your life differently in the divorce. Maybe you've started working out, and so you're developing these healthy routines, that you're carving out that time for yourself. You've also probably talked to a financial advisor through this process. So either someone that you've already been working with, or we've connected you with somebody so that now you've got financial goals. Maybe you weren't a part of those conversations before, or maybe those goals were joint goals, but you get the opportunity now to figure out what are your goals, what's important for you, and you can make those choices on your own, for your own financial goals, your own career goals. Maybe you felt like you had to stay at a job that you didn't love because it was flexible, but now that your schedule is different with the kids, you can look at a different career goal that makes sense for you. You can reconnect with friends and prioritize other relationships with grown-ups that maybe have been neglected for years. But you can take those active steps so that you can take your own steps for the glow up. And then when it comes to finding your joy and being able to be on the other side of it, we so look forward to checking in with our clients throughout the year after we've settled their case. And let me tell you, like, when it comes down to it, once you're on the other side of this, you're going to look back and you're going to be so proud of yourself. And we are going to be so proud of you for the growth that you've shown in coming through that year. It's just the hardest thing. I was just talking to a client this morning. The hardest thing is that first step. And once you've taken that first step, and that first step, frankly, is usually setting up the consultation. And so once you've done that, it just gets easier from there. It's just building that momentum. It's building on the work that you've already done to move forward in this process. And we want to be here with you every step of the way. And again, like, I can tell you that that we are partners with our clients. And we like to work with them to celebrate those wins. And we like to grieve those losses too. Again, like, we're here for you every step of the way. So for all of our participants who came today, I'm posting in the chat a link for you to book a consult with us. And so the link that I'm giving you is a link for a half-price consultation with the firm. That reduced fee is $175. And our Peaceful Blueprint session is for an hour and a half that you can spend with us, talking through up to an hour and a half to talk through all of the issues that you're going through. A lot of times, people will come in before they're even sure what they want to do. And really, that's the best time to consult with an attorney, whether it's with us or whether it's with a different firm. I want for you to consider that if you're even thinking about getting a divorce, or you're just uncertain about what path to go. It's really good to understand and get clarity about your own finances, to get clarity about your own co-parenting relationship, to see what the likely outcomes are in your case, in terms of what the schedule might look like. And then it's important to just understand what those next steps are. What, from a strategy point, makes the most sense for when to have that conversation with your spouse, either about, hey, look, if we can't figure this out, we're going to need to separate. I really want to go to marriage counseling with you. I want to go to discernment counseling with you, which is this really cool technique. It's a mode of therapy where you decide whether or not the two of you are both committed to stay in the marriage, or if you're going to separate, what that looks like, how you can peacefully separate together. And so a lot of times when people come in to see me, they're not hiring me the same day. I'm sending them, a list of therapists, a list of folks who practice discernment counseling, so that they can go get the answers that they need about their marriage and commit to whatever path they're taking, but that they've got some reassurance and understanding about what happens if it's not successful. So I really do recommend going in to see an attorney if you've got those sorts of questions, so that you can find that peace of mind. And like I said earlier, my firm is committed, to finding peaceful settlements for people. And I'll tell you that most cases are settled outside of court. Not most cases may not be peacefully settled, but across the board in Wake County, Johnson County, Harnett County, Lee County, Durham County, Orange County, Chatham County, most cases settle. Most cases don't end up in trials because trials are expensive. They cost a lot of money, they cost a lot of time, and it's really hard to move forward as co-parents or as, like people who can see each other out in public once you've gone into a courtroom and slung dirt at the other party all day long. So I will tell you, even if you think that a peaceful settlement is not possible for you, it would be worth scheduling a consultation so that you can understand what all of the different paths forward are. And I can walk you through what that looks like. No matter which direction you decide, I think it's worth keeping an open mind that settling outside of court is a possibility. Even if you're not best friends, even if you really hate the person, it's good to think about, what's providing peace for you, what's helping you to be able to, at the end of the day, know that you've preserved your resources in the best way possible, that you've maintained control of the process instead of leaving it up to a judge to make those choices for you, and that you have remain true to who you are as a person, and what your values are as you move forward. So I encourage you to reach out and see if we're a good fit for you. It's a great idea to schedule a consultation. Again, I'll send you all of the resources, all of the different professionals that you can get involved in the process, and we'll go from there to see how we might help. I see that I've got one more question that came in, and it's about cost. And I'll tell you, I am glad to talk specifics about cost in the consultation, but I also don't hide it outside of the consultations either. We do flat fees. So in my firm, what that means is that you're going to know after we go through the consultation how much it's going to cost you every step of the way. So if you're hiring me to just draft the agreement, if you're hiring me to negotiate, if we need to step it up, like you think I'm just going to have to draft it for you, but then your partner gets the agreement, says, nope, I'm not agreeing to this, talk to my lawyer. So that's normally how we structure it, is drafting only. Or if we're doing negotiations, there'll be an additional fee at that time. Then if we have to go to a mediation, and I do that so that we've got these stages of representation so that you're not paying more than you need to, but so that you have a sum certain that you have to do. And I'd say the average cost for my clients that come into my office to hire me is somewhere between $5,000 and at the higher end, like $15,000. And again, that's if there's a small business or other things that we have to divide up, or more complex retirement accounts that we have to look into. But for most people, that's going to be significantly lower than what the cost of litigation is. Again, I've been a litigation attorney. I've worked with litigation firms. And so I've had my own firm that litigated many years ago when I was in my 20s, many, many years ago, when I had a small law firm of my own then. And, I'll tell you, litigation costs are probably, again, ballpark estimate somewhere between $20,000 and $200,000. And again, it is wildly varied depending on the attorney that you hire. If you're in an hourly billing model, how long it takes them to do certain things, how long they have to wait in court that day. You're paying for every single time that they've got to go sit in a courtroom and wait for a continuance. You're paying for every single piece of paper that has to be filed with the court that they've got to prepare. So there's lots of mandatory financial disclosures that have to be done. There's lots of temporary hearings that you might have to have, discovery, depositions. It really adds up when you're in a contentious case. So again, for most people, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You don't need to blow your kids' college fund. You don't need to blow your whole 401k to fight about things when we can come up with those decisions outside of court. And, say it because, I truly believe that it's what leads to the best outcomes for clients. It's what I've seen, like, most cases settle. Even when they start from a litigation place, you just waste all of that money having all these temporary hearings, sending all this paperwork back and forth. We can just share all the financial information to begin with, have a conversation and figure it out, and not let attorneys burn through all of your money, and let more of that money stay with the family. And I think that that really speaks to more and more people these days, that they want to have more control of their life, that they want to be in the driver's seat and not just like listen blindly to what an attorney is telling them is the right thing for their life. They want for us to be a co-pilot, that's offering them advice, but empowering them with the information so that they can make those decisions for their family. And that's sort of the way it is, this way it should be at every law firm. Is you should be empowered to feel like that you're getting all of the information that you need so that you're choosing what comes next in your case. I'm guiding you. I'm giving you everything that I know. You're benefiting from all of my years of experience, my education, um, all of my connections that I have, everything that I've learned from my professional associates, right? You get that benefit, so that you can make the best decisions for your family, because I might know all of that stuff, but I don't know your family better than you. I don't know your kids better than you. And I don't know your goals better than you. I can help you to clarify those things. I can help you to understand what the external things are, but you know your family. And I just want to be here to help you to make the best decisions for them. So I hope that you guys reach out. And if you've got any other follow-up questions, you can feel free to reach out to our firm. We'll be glad to set up a time for you to come in and talk with us. And like I said, I'm going to send out some of those common custody options so that you can just see different schedules that different families do, that work for them. It doesn't mean that it's going to be the right fit for your family, but that's the really cool thing, right, about figuring it out outside of court, is that you guys get to decide what's best for your family. It's not a judge trying to fit you into a mold. That's the standard stuff that happens. You can figure it out and customize it for what makes sense for you. It was really good spending this hour and 11 minutes with you guys. I apologize for going over, but that's why I have to make my consults an hour and a half, because I'm not an hour consult kind of woman. I'm definitely going to go over that. So it was good talking with y'all. If you need anything else, thank you for asking questions. Thank you for participating in the polls today. I think that really makes it more engaging so that I can give you the information that you need. I look forward to seeing each and every single one of you guys come in for a consult, and I wish you the best. I hope that you are able to find the answers that you need in order to find peace in your own life. So have a great day.